You're listening to the N2K Space Network.
Looking for a career where innovation meets impact? Vanguard's technology team is shaping the future of financial services by solving complex challenges with cutting-edge solutions. Whether you're passionate about AI, cybersecurity, or cloud computing, Vanguard offers a dynamic and collaborative environment where your ideas drive change. With career growth opportunities and a focus on work-life balance, you'll have the flexibility to thrive both professionally and personally. Explore open cybersecurity and technology roles today at vanguardjobs.com.
Today is March 28th, 2025. I'm Maria Varmazis, and this is T-Minus.
T-minus 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift. Go for deploy. Roger, roll.
Assignments for the NASA SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the ISS have been announced.
4.
ISI says that it'll be providing satellite data to the Situation Center at NATO HQ.
3.
UN agencies for telecommunications, aviation, and maritime shipping have called for urgent protection of the radio navigation satellite service.
2.
Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo freighter NG-22 mission to the ISS has been delayed indefinitely.
1.
The U.S. Space Force's Space Systems Command has on-ramped Rocket Lab and Stoke Space for national security space launch missions. Our partners at NASASpaceflight.com will be bringing us the Space Traffic Report, rounding up the launch news from the last 7 days and taking a look at what's to come in the next week. Happy Friday, everybody. I hope you're having a great one. Here's today's Intel briefing for you. The U.S. Space Force's Space Systems Command has on-ramped Rocket Lab and Stoke Space for national security space launch missions. The two companies have been awarded firm fixed price, indefinite delivery, indefinite quantity, national security space launch Phase 3 Lane 1 contracts. You get all that? Rocket Lab and Stoke Space joined Blue Origin, SpaceX, and ULA, who were on-ramped to Lane 1 last year. Rocket Lab and Stoke Space will each receive a $5 million firm fixed-price task order to conduct an initial capabilities assessment and develop their approach to tailored mission assurance. As we mentioned in yesterday's show with the announcement of ULA's Vulcan being certified as an NSSL partner, it is a long process to get the full approvals. SSE's tailored mission assurance is a tiered approach to the government's breadth and depth of the launch vehicle baseline understanding and the associated risks to the mission. Space Systems Command says the next opportunity for providers to on-ramp their emerging systems to the Lane 1 IDIQ contract will occur in the first quarter of fiscal year 2026. Engineers have found an issue with Northrop Grumman's Cygnus cargo freighter, delaying the NG-22 mission to the International Space Station. The resupply and trash removal mission has been delayed indefinitely after engineers confirmed that the pressurized cargo module had sustained damage during shipping. The damage is thought to have been caused by heavy equipment striking the shipping container. Ugh. Northrop Grumman notified NASA of the issue earlier this month. It was scheduled to make a resupply mission to the ISS today. SpaceX will instead carry the next resupply mission to the orbiting station in April. A spokesperson for NASA said that Northrop Grumman's Commercial Resupply Services 23 will be the company's next flight to the International Space Station for NASA, targeted to launch no earlier than fall 2025. We hope nobody on the station was waiting for a really important mail. Don't you just hate it when the trash starts to smell? Yeah. The United Nations agencies for telecommunications, aviation, and maritime shipping have called for urgent protection of the radio navigation satellite service known as RNSS. In a joint statement, the agencies noted, with grave concern, the increasing number of cases of harmful interference in the form of jamming and spoofing affecting the radio navigation satellite service. The service supports accurate global navigation and timekeeping and is critical for navigation of civil aircraft, maritime vessels, humanitarian assistance vehicles, as well as for time synchronization of telecommunications networks. The agencies urged their member states worldwide to take necessary measures to prevent satellite systems from suffering harmful interference. It went on to call on member states to reinforce resilience of the systems which rely on RNSS for navigation, position, and timing in relation to this type of interference. ICEYE has announced that it will be providing satellite data to the Situation Center at NATO HQ, also known as CITCEN. CITCEN will be able to access ICEYE capabilities, which ICEYE says will enhance its capacity to deliver better and faster data-driven assessments to decision makers. ICEYE has already supplied synthetic aperture radar or SAR data and satellites to a number of NATO allied and friendly nations. They say this announcement deepens the collaboration with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. No details were shared about the contract value. Assignments for the NASA SpaceX Crew 11 mission to the ISS have been announced. 4 crew members from 3 space agencies will join crew members aboard the space station no earlier than July 2025. The assigned crew includes NASA astronauts Commander Zena Cardman and pilot Mike Fink, JAXA astronaut mission specialist Kimia Yui, and Roscosmos cosmonaut mission specialist Oleg Platonov. The flight is the 11th crew rotation with SpaceX to the station as part of NASA's Commercial Crew Program. Zena Cardman will finally get her first space flight after being dropped from the Crew 9 team due to the decision to keep Sonny Williams and Butch Wilmore on station for a longer rotation. Congratulations to the entire Crew 11 team. We look forward to hearing more about the science that they're going to be working on during their ISS rotation. That's it for our Friday Intel briefing. N2K senior producer Alice Carruth has more on the stories that we think you should be aware of. Alice?
Maria, there are 5 additional links in the show notes for you to read today. TechCrunch has laid out China's dates for their planned planetary missions. Vandenberg Space Force Base has added an advanced vehicle operations room. The US Air Force is reportedly looking at cancelling the Space Development Agency's future transport layer satellites in favour of tapping SpaceX. ISAR Aerospace has postponed their first flight from Norway to no earlier than Saturday, March the 29th. Fingers crossed for them. And Saxaford Space Force has inked an agreement with the West of Scotland Space Cluster for R&D.
Whew, that is a lot of additional stories. And where are those links again?
We add links to all the stories mentioned throughout the show in the selected reading section of our show notes, which can be found on the podcast platform you listen through, or on our website, space.n2k.com, and click on this episode title.
Hey, T-Minus crew, tune in tomorrow for T-Minus Deep Space. It's our show for extended interviews, special editions, and deep dives with some of the most influential professionals in the space industry. Tomorrow, we have former White House Principal Deputy National Cyber Director Jake Braun talking about whether space should be designated as critical infrastructure. So check it out while you're heading to a game, spring gardening, or mentally preparing for a space symposium, because many of us are flying to Colorado in a week. You don't want to miss it.
Is your AppSec program actually reducing risk? Developers and AppSec teams drown in critical alerts, yet 95% of fixes don't reduce real risk. Why? Traditional tools use generic prioritization and lack the ability to filter real threats from noise. High-impact threats slip through and surface in production, costing 10 times more to fix. Ox Security helps you focus on the 5% of issues that truly matter before they reach the cloud. Find out what risks deserve your attention in 2025. Download the Application Security Benchmark from Ox Security.
It's time for the Space Traffic Report from our partners at nasaspaceflight.com.
I'm Alicia Siegel for NSF, and this is your weekly space traffic report for T-minus space. Let's start off with NASA's Parker Solar Probe and the scorching heat of the sun. On March 22nd at 2242 UTC, NASA's Parker Solar Probe made its 23rd closest approach to the sun of its entire mission, matching its own record for shortest distance to the sun and speed around our own star. The spacecraft arrived at its current orbit following a Venus flyby executed in November, after which it had its closest approach ever on December 24th of last year. Just like that encounter, this one is the closest yet, and it was also successful. NASA confirmed that the probe phoned back home on Tuesday, March 25th, confirming good health. Through these approaches, Parker will be able to gather unprecedented data on the solar corona and solar wind. Moving back down to Earth, we had a few launches this week, starting with the Falcon 9. Liftoff took place on March 24th at 1748 UTC from Space Launch Complex 40 at Cape Canaveral in Florida. The rocket was carrying out the NROL-69 mission for the National Reconnaissance Office. While the mission was classified, things like hazard notices and the performance needed from Falcon 9 give us a clue as to what kind of payload it might be carrying. It appears that for this mission, the NROL-69 payload was a Naval Ocean Surveillance System satellite, which is a type of signals intelligence satellite operated by the U.S. Navy. These satellites often orbit the Earth in orbits ranging between 1,000 and 1,200 kilometers in altitude and at an approximately 63-degree inclination. Given that orbital inclination, these payloads have traditionally been launched from Vandenberg, and in fact, SpaceX launched one of them from here in 2022 on the NROL-85 mission. However, with Falcon 9's payload performance, it's still possible to launch into these types of orbits from the Cape if the rocket performs an inclination change later in the mission. In fact, due to this peculiar mission profile, many people in Northern Europe were able to observe the dump of propellant from the Falcon 9 second stage after it performed its deorbit burn following payload deployment. This is a totally common procedure that the Falcon 9 second stage performs after its mission is completed in order to go into a safe state by venting excess propellant, lowering its tank pressure, and powering down its batteries. On other missions, this maneuver often ends up taking place over Australia or over the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, so it's not something that Europeans would be very used to seeing. If you saw it and had no idea what it was, well, now you know. The first stage for this mission, B-1092, was a rookie one, flying for only its second time on this mission. It successfully returned to Earth, landing back at SpaceX's Landing Zone 1 ground pad just a few miles south of the launch site. From the Southern Hemisphere, we also had another Electron launch this week, the 5th overall for this year. The mission, called Finding Hot Wildfires Near You, started off on March 26th at 1530 UTC from Rocket Lab's own spaceport in New Zealand. Electron was carrying 8 satellites for Aurora Tech into sun-synchronous orbit. These 8 satellites are part of a constellation of spacecraft that Aurora Tech is building in orbit to better monitor wildfires with more frequency to assist with better response times here on the ground. Hence the cheeky name for this mission. The satellites employ a set of thermal infrared cameras to spot the wildfires and changes in the landscape to monitor their growth. And with multiple of these satellites going into orbit, the company hopes to have a nearly continuous observation capability. That same day, just a few minutes later, we had a Changzheng 3BE rocket launching from China. Liftoff took place on March 26th at 1555 UTC from Launch Complex 2 at the Xichang Satellite Launch Center. The mission was carrying the 4th Tianlian-2 satellite into a geosynchronous transfer orbit. Tianlian-2 satellites are Chinese communication relay satellites used to support communications between satellites orbiting Earth and ground stations when they're outside of ground station coverage. These satellites are akin to the U.S. Tracking Data and Relay Satellite System, or TDRS, which NASA uses for communication with several of its orbital assets, like the International Space Station. China uses the Tianlian satellites in the same manner, such as in support of its Tiangong Space Station for operations outside of ground station coverage. And to wrap up the week, we had the launch of a Starlink mission from Vandenberg. Liftoff of Falcon 9 occurred on March 26th at 2211 UTC, carrying a batch of 27 Starlink V2 mini-satellites into low Earth orbit. The first stage for this launch, B-1063, was flying for a 24th time, and despite its age, it successfully landed on SpaceX's drone ship, Of Course I Still Love You. With that batch of satellites, SpaceX has now launched a total of 8,144 Starlink satellites, of which 1,009 have re-entered and 6,492 have moved into their operational orbit. Going into next week, on March 29th, we'll have a partial solar eclipse as seen here from Earth. The eclipse should be visible in the northern hemisphere, primarily over northern Europe and western Russia. The northeast of the United States, as well as Canada and Greenland, will also be able to see the event. This is only a partial solar eclipse, which means we won't have a path of totality, but there is a path of maximum eclipse, which will start from the central Atlantic Ocean and should move north across the Earth, passing by Canada, grazing the North Pole, and finishing in Russia. If you're in the path and you want to observe it, remember to never look at it directly and use appropriate gear, or else you might risk damaging your eyes while trying. It's not every day that we can say a rocket launch might happen during a solar eclipse, but this weekend, there might be a possibility. Next week, ESAR Aerospace will try to get its Spectrum rocket off the ground for the very first time. After several delays due to weather, the company may try to launch as soon as March 29th, with the 3-hour launch window opening at 11:30 UTC. If that date and time holds, that'll be right as the eclipse is happening over Norway. And if you don't want to miss this launch, you're in luck, because NSF is providing launch livestream production services to ESAR, so we'll be covering it as it happens. Our team is on site and ready to support from the land of the midnight sun. This weekend, we'll also have the launch of a Chang'e 7A rocket from the Wenchang Space Launch Site in China. The launch is currently targeted to take place within a 78-minute window that opens on March 29th at 15:57 UTC. Firefly's Alpha rocket is also waiting on good weather to take off to the skies, but the latest notices indicate the company may be aiming for another try this weekend. The 68-minute launch window for this mission, dubbed Message in a Booster, is set to open on March 30th at 13:37 UTC. Schedules are still fluid since the company hasn't committed to this launch date yet, so don't be surprised if there are further delays. NSF will also be providing live stream production services to Firefly for this launch, so we'll be covering it on our channel as well. Next week, we'll also have a trio of Falcon 9 missions to end the month of March and kick off the month of April. First, we'll have a Starlink launch from Florida, with the 4-hour launch window opening on March 30th at 19:16 UTC. After that, we'll have another Starlink launch, this time from Vandenberg, with the 4-hour launch window opening on April 1st at 1 minute past midnight UTC. Then, just a few minutes later, SpaceX will also be launching the From-2 mission, the first crewed flight to fly in a polar orbit around the globe. For this mission, Falcon 9 will be launching southeast from Launch Complex 39A, performing a dogleg around the southeast coast of Florida as it inserts Crew Dragon into a 90-degree orbital inclination. The window for this mission, set to take place on April 1st, is approximately 5 hours long. Within that window, there are 4 available launch opportunities. The first is 1:47 UTC, the second at 3:20, and the third and fourth at 4:53 and 6:26 UTC, respectively. And to wrap up the week, we'll have another launch from China, this time with a Chang'e 2D rocket. The 37-minute window for that launch opens on April 1st at 3:52 UTC. I'm Alicia Siegel for NSF, and that's your weekly space traffic report. Now back to T-Minus Space.
We'll be right back.
And now, a brief message from our sponsor, DropZone AI. Is your SOC drowning in alerts, with legitimate threats sitting in queues for hours or even days? The latest SANS SOC survey report reveals alert fatigue and limited automation are SOC teams' greatest barriers. DropZone AI, recognized by Gartner as a cool vendor, directly addresses these challenges through autonomous recursive reasoning investigations, quickly eliminating false positives, enriching context, and enabling analysts to prioritize real incidents faster. Take control of your alerts and investigations with DropZone AI.
Welcome back. In just a few weeks, another Blue Origin flight to suborbital space will be lifting off from West Texas, this time with a celebrity-studded all-women crew aboard. The crew includes Gayle King, who is co-host of CBS Mornings, which is a big morning TV show here in the United States. And it's funny because sending a morning TV show host to space is a major plot point in last season's The Morning Show on Apple TV, where that host was played by Jennifer Aniston, who then gives up her seat to Reese Witherspoon. Anyway, art imitates reality, and the other way around. In this case, reality imitates TV. And it's not the first time that that's happened when it comes to Blue Origin space missions either. Yeah, the Shat. Captain Kirk himself, William Shatner, also went to suborbital space on a Blue Origin flight in 2021. At that time, he was 90. Yeah, skosh older than Captain Kirk zipping around space on the Enterprise, but still. After playing the most iconic space explorer of all time, Shatner got to experience the real deal. Even nearly 4 years after his adventure, this Trekkie gets a little emotional thinking about how beautifully poetic that was. And Sir William Shatner had some words of advice for his fellow TV star Gayle King as she prepares for her own epic journey to the final frontier. You're on an adventure. You've got to embrace it. Sorry, that was a terrible Shatner. Still, it's wise words from someone who's been there and inspired countless others to do the same. And now over to N2K producer Liz Stokes for some Fun Fact Friday.
Welcome to Fun Fact Friday, your one-stop shop for the quirkiest tidbits of wisdom. I'm your host, Liz Stokes, here at N2K Cyberwire. Ever wondered what it takes to break free from Earth's gravity? The answer? Speed. And lots of it. A spacecraft needs to hit a jaw-dropping 25,008 miles per hour to escape our planet's pull. That's nearly Mach 33, faster than most of us can even comprehend. So, next time you're in a rush, just remember, escaping gravity takes more than a good pair of sneakers. See you soon.
That's it for T-Minus for March 28th, 2025, brought to you by N2K Cyberwire. For additional resources from today's report, check out our show notes at space.n2k.com. We'd love to know what you think of this podcast. Your feedback ensures we deliver the insight that keeps you a step ahead in the rapidly changing space industry. If you like the show, please share a rating and review in your podcast app. Please also fill out the survey in the show notes or send an email to space@n2k.com. We're privileged that N2K Cyberwire is part of the daily routine of the most influential leaders and operators in the public and private sector, from the Fortune 500 to many of the world's preeminent intelligence and law enforcement agencies. N2K makes it easy for companies to optimize your biggest investment, your people. We make you smarter about your teams while making your teams smarter. Learn how at n2k.com. N2K's senior producer is Alice Carruth. Our producer is Liz Stokes. We're mixed by Elliot Peltzman and Trey Hester, with original music by Elliot Peltzman. Our executive producer is Jennifer Iben. Peter Kilpie is our publisher, and I am your host, Maria Varmazes. Thanks for listening. Have a wonderful weekend.
T-Minus.
Investigating is hard enough. Your tools shouldn't make it harder. Maltego brings all your intelligence into one platform and gives you curated data, along with a full suite of tools to handle any digital investigation. Plus, with on-demand courses and live training, your team won't just install the platform. They'll actually use it and connect the dots so fast, cyber criminals won't realize they're already in cuffs. Maltego is trusted by global law enforcement, financial institutions, and security teams worldwide. See it in action now at maltego.com.